tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's about time we had genuine, free trade within Canada.
A push to tear down interprovincial trade walls in the face of U.S. tariff threats. Some federal officials say it could be done within a month. Plus,
I prefer to call it death dealer. That's what these fentanyl dealers really are. They're death dealers.
the call for stiffer penalties against fentanyl dealers in Canada. What are the challenges amid Donald Trump's demands? And
plan introduces some significant land use and development changes.
yet another rethink of Granville Street. Now, the city of Vancouver envisions the future of the busy downtown strip as business owners ask for help now.
Late night SkyTrain, clean up open drug use, and turn Granville Street into what it's meant to be, which is an entertainment zone.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Ottawa and the provinces now have extra incentive to try to tear down more barriers to trade within Canada. Donald Trump's tariff threats have politicians here seeing what they can do to boost business. And as Mira Baines explains, federal leaders say those barriers could be lowered or cut within a month.
It's about time we had genuine, free trade within Canada.
The threat of Donald Trump's tariffs has inspired a push for provinces and the federal government to reduce interprovincial trade barriers. Different rules and regulations cost businesses time and money. Now federal officials aim to tear down some of those walls within 30 days. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says people would like to see barriers lifted on food, alcohol, and labor mobility to help strengthen the domestic economy.
We can see a boost of up to $200 billion in Canada if we were to remove internal trade barriers through mutual recognition.
The changes could be a boon for BC's wineries.
There's 600 wineries across Canada. Most of them are extremely small.
Wine Growers Canada says more than 4.2 million tourists visit wineries across the country. Bringing down trade barriers would lead to expanded access to out-of-province customers.
They're producing fantastic small lot wines. Direct-to-consumer delivery would provide a sales channel for them outside of their cellar door.
The BC Trucking Association says improving interprovincial trade also requires more infrastructure, especially to move large, overweight equipment from ports and across highways.
Particularly work in for equipment that's moving to Alberta. Instead of it coming to British Columbia ports, it moves to the Port of Everett, and in many circumstances to the Port of Houston, Texas.
The devil will be in the details. While alcohol rules may be easier to relax, some restrictions are in place to safeguard the French language. Still, for Ottawa and the provinces, the clock is ticking. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Amid concerns from Donald Trump about the security of Canada's border, the RCMP's Black Hawk helicopter was showing itself off at Langley Airport before departing on a patrol.
It's about preventing criminal activity at our borders, whether it's happening southbound or these days northbound.
The chopper will be patrolling BC's border with Washington, Idaho, and Montana. The force says it will target anyone involved in human smuggling, trafficking drugs, or crossing the border illegally. Trump gave Canada a 30-day reprieve from tariffs after Ottawa agreed to boost border security. As threats to tie U.S. tariffs to the flow of fentanyl into and out of Canada, there is a growing call from some families to see those selling and supplying the drug face tougher penalties. Jason Proctor looks at the calls and challenges for stiffer charges against drug dealers in Canada.
Thousands of victims, thousands of angry, grieving families.
I prefer to call it death dealer. That's what these fentanyl dealers really are. They're death dealers.
And for every death, the knowledge that someone sold these toxic drugs.
I've been angry for so long. I was angry for so long at that person.
So why are so few dealers held accountable for the deaths caused by the drugs they sell? And should they be charged with murder?
And if my daughter died, I would go out hunting that person down and taking their life.
Brianna Martin's story is one of heartache. She died at home last year after taking fentanyl. She was 27. And like most victims of toxic drugs, no one has been charged directly in her death.
She was just always having fun in random places.
We've come to the small city of Nanaimo to meet Brianna's boyfriend, Stephen Whitehead. He watched as she struggled with cocaine, then with heroin. In the months before she died, she overdosed repeatedly. She was even intubated. He felt powerless.
What I remember is the dog's face every single time that she overdosed. That's what I remember. That look of disappointment and sadness that the dog had and worry. And that was that was pretty hard.
Frustrated, Whitehead turned to an unlikely ally.
I don't mind that you sell it to her. Appreciate you being on top of quality and safety.
He texted Brianna's drug dealer and asked him to stop selling to her. That dealer said he'd do what he could.
I just want to get paid for what I'm owed, and I'll block Bree's number and never deal with her. Trust me, I don't want the drama or the karma on me as well.
Look at the log, I lifted it.
But with that door closed, Brianna looked elsewhere for drugs, and another dealer filled the void. Days later, she was dead.
I realized that the more people that stopped dealing with her, the only ones that were left were going to be the ones that didn't care if they killed her.
So who sold toxic drugs to Brianna Martin, and did they know they could kill her? A search warrant obtained by CBC reveals the steps police took to try to solve that mystery. Nanaimo RCMP searched her phone, hoping to implicate someone in her death. They tracked license plates from the cul-de-sac where she bought drugs and tried to pinpoint her last dealer. In the months since we started looking into Brianna's death, we've talked to a number of the people in her life, most importantly, her mother, who was going to sit down and talk to us, but became so despondent recently that she said she just couldn't do it. One thing she did tell me, though, is that she wants to see whoever sold the drugs that killed her daughter pay for what they've done.
For the first time in California, according to the Placer County District Attorney's Office, a judge Friday convicted a fentanyl dealer for murder.
Don't come to Placer County to sell fentanyl. You might pay for it with a life sentence.
In California, fentanyl traffickers are already paying a high price for dealing in death. In November, the state passed a new law that makes it easier to charge dealers with murder. It's called Alexandra's Law, and it's named after Alexandra Capilouto. She was Matt Capilouto's daughter.
The drug dealer ended up selling her counterfeit oxycodone pills, of which she took half of one before going to bed. And my wife found her dead in her bed the next morning. This drug dealer, or I prefer to call it death dealer, that's what these fentanyl dealers really are. They're death dealers.
The man who sold Alexandra the drugs got 9 years for drug trafficking, not murder. But Capilouto knew who he was long before the law caught him. Did you want to sort of confront him, or what? How do you...
I had to constrain myself because, yeah, we were able to identify who this man was semi-early on. I knew where he lived, and I just had to trust that the right outcome would eventually happen, and fortunately, it did happen. You know, but to answer your question, that was for a dad, that was a challenging time.
My family was one of the lucky ones who did find a semblance of justice.
Capilouto channeled that anger into action. He fought for years to make Alexandra's Law a reality. It gives dealers a last chance warning.
So what Alexandra's Law is, it's an admonishment that would be given to anybody convicted of a drug offense, making them aware of the dangers of those drugs, and that if they continue in this activity and someone dies as a result of drugs that they supply, they can be held accountable for murder.
In the United States, murder convictions for fentanyl dealers have made headlines. In Canada, the toughest charge they're likely to face is manslaughter, but even that is rare.
It seems to the average individual that you sell something to somebody that you know might kill them, you committed a murder. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's difficult for some people to understand what's required in an investigation.
Cash Heed gets the drive behind Alexandra's Law. He's BC's former top cop and was the head of Vancouver's drug squad.
I have a young daughter. She's 17 years old. If someone sold her something that caused harm to her, I would want to seek vengeance against that individual, and if my daughter died, I would go out hunting that person down and taking their life. In all honesty, that's exactly what I would do.
Heed has long pushed for Canadian police to go after drug dealers, not users.
What do you think about that idea of charging somebody with murder if they've knowingly sold a drug to somebody that can and has killed them?
If they knowingly, and that's what we really have to face here. Absolutely, in my opinion, that person should be pursued and prosecuted.
So how often does that happen, you know, this methodical going after that individual?
Seldom.
But Heed cautions that prosecution is just part of a crisis that's driven by endless demand.
In the course of your career, you must have spoken to drug dealers who have sold, you know, drugs that have killed people. What do they think?
They tell me that there's so much money to be made. If they're not doing it, someone else is going to be making that money.
The market for drugs is bottomless. That was on display even during our short visit to Nanaimo. We saw a coroner called to another death from toxic drugs, one of nearly 100 in this small city last year.
You've had experiences with overdoses. Like, how many have you had?
28.
28?
We met 26-year-old Bruce Brown in downtown Nanaimo. He's been using drugs since he was a teenager. He writes his name on his hand in case a paramedic or coroner needs it.
The people that are selling fentanyl, do you think they think about the possibility it could kill someone like you?
No, I think the only thing that's on their mind is money.
Brown says many dealers are users themselves, and he doesn't think charging them with murder will make any difference.
Will it stop fentanyl from being on the streets or the selling of drugs?
I'm not too sure, but no, I don't think so.
Stephen Whitehead has spent the past year thinking about what should happen to whoever sold toxic drugs to Brianna Martin.
If they do find them and then send them to jail, it's just like it would almost be kind of like a hollow victory, because another person would just take their place and then another Brianna would die. Like, do I want like revenge or do I want solutions at this point? Like, I've been angry for so long. I was angry for so long at that person.
Darius Madavi, our science and climate specialist, joins us with a look at the weather. Oh, that's a busy map.
Yes, there's a few things going on. So air quality statement, that hasn't changed. You know, just that high pressure sitting over the provinces allow that air to really move. So we've got that air quality warning still in place. Arctic outflow warning still for the North Coast inland, but the one that was around the Whistler Valley has dropped. And then a weather statement for the island, warning of those flurries that might pop up throughout the night tonight, and then should taper off by tomorrow morning there. So if we zoom into the South Coast, you'll notice that we haven't really seen those flurries yet. It was a real possibility, but we haven't seen too much in the way of precipitation. A little bit, there you go, coming into the South Island potentially. But really the story is those temperatures. I know that's cut off a little bit, but feeling very cold here on the South Coast and across BC. So we'll talk more about that later in the show, Dan.
Okay, thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
Canada's Governor General has just appointed 3 new senators, and one is a pioneering Mountie in BC. Baltej Dillon will take his place in the Red Chamber as an independent. Nearly 40 years ago, Dillon refused a job with the RCMP because he was told to shave his beard and remove his turban. After a 2-year fight to maintain his Sikh faith, Dillon became the first officer to wear a turban on the force. He retired in 2019, then went on to work in BC's anti-gang agency and ran for the NDP as a candidate at last year's provincial election. Coming up, Vancouver's ambitious plans to once again reimagine one of its most iconic streets. What do business owners want from a revamped Granville Street? That's next.
I think it's important to give a human face to the stories that we hear every day, the people that they affect. And I think talking to those people is what really gives us the true sense of the impact of the stories that we're hearing.
The city of Vancouver has unveiled plans to once again revitalize Granville Street downtown. Its goal is to transform the historic area into a safe and vibrant entertainment zone. But as John Hernandez reports, this is not the first time the city has made this promise.
From graffiti to boarded up storefronts, many will agree times aren't what they used to be on Granville Street.
We haven't had a really good year since that year with the Olympics.
Dave Kershaw has been running nightclubs on Granville Street since 1996, and he says business has hit an all-time low.
It was the worst December of all time, and now the worst January of all time.
Granville Street has been a popular hub for decades. In the 50s and 60s, it was a space for shopping, cafes, and entertainment, given the nickname Theatre Row. By the 70s, it was transformed into a transit mall.
It was a pretty exciting, vibrant place. There was lots of stuff going on, colorful street characters, lots of shops. We don't see the same number of shops anymore, and we certainly don't see theaters anymore.
In the 90s, the city reimagined it as a nightlife and entertainment district. In 2010, it was ground zero for Olympic fans.
The Olympics was certainly the high point for Granville Street. You kind of saw it as one of the big focal points towards public life.
And then the decline. Like much of the city, the area grapples with homelessness and street crime. Experts say it never bounced back from the pandemic, and people's habits have changed.
I think over time, with changing shopping patterns, changing nightlife consumption patterns, that it now kind of presents a new set of challenges for the city.
Challenges the city is trying to tackle. On Wednesday, it unveiled a proposed new vision, which includes car-free zones, outdoor and indoor entertainment spaces, higher building densities and heights, and a push for more hotels.
The plan introduces some significant land use and development changes to the area.
A long-term plan, but business owners say they want to see improvements to the area now, and they have their own ideas.
A late-night SkyTrain, clean up the open drug use, and, turn Granville Street into what it's meant to be, which is an entertainment zone.
The city says its plan would include street improvements as early as this summer. It's seeking public input until February 23rd. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A BC company says it is 2 years away from running a new ferry service out of downtown Vancouver. Green Line Marine plans to run high-speed, all-electric ferries to Bowen Island and Gibsons on the Sunshine Coast. More now from Chad Pawson.
Move over planes and boats in Cole Harbour's busy waters. 2 new passenger ferries are soon set to sail.
We're there to serve people. They'll board the ferry as the ferry charges, and then we'll be off and running.
For 2 years, Green Line's been working on this. The 2 ferries would each hold 150 people, be high speed, all electric, and fill a green transportation void, according to local politicians.
An option that takes cars off the road, relieves congestion in the upper levels, and connects Bowen Island's residents to the mainland, and the mainland's visitors to us, is long overdue.
Green Line needs help from the 3 municipalities, though, to approve changes to land use so its vessels can dock and charge, most notably at Vancouver's Harbour Green Dock.
The Harbour Green Dock has been a vital part of Vancouver's waterfront, but its potential has never really been fully realized. And that's why the Park Board is taking an active role in exploring how this public asset can support sustainable low-carbon transportation while maintaining its recreational value.
Politicians from all 3 levels of government say they're committed to working together to see Green Line's ferries a success and want to be back down in Vancouver's Cole Harbour to celebrate the company's first sailing, expected 2 years from now. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
There is midday in White Rock, a look out at the pier where people were taking a long snowy walk, and the Rock, of course. Darius has your BC-wide weather forecast coming up.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
It seems the stakes at play with the new U.S. administration could not be higher. Today, the Prime Minister issued a dire warning about Donald Trump, saying the new U.S. president is serious when he says he wants Canada to become America's 51st state. He made those remarks at a Canada-U.S. economic summit after journalists had left the event. As Evan Dyer tells us, Justin Trudeau outlined his beliefs on why Trump wants this country.
So as much as I know the media would love to stick around for the Q&A, they're not going to be able to do that.
The doors were closed, but the mic was still on.
But Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. And it is a real thing. In my conversation with him
The CBC News camera didn't capture all of Trudeau's remarks about annexation, but the Toronto Star captured more, and he made it clear he didn't believe the tariffs were about trade or drugs or migrants. I suggest that not only does the Trump administration know how many critical minerals we have, but that may be even why they keep talking about absorbing us and making us the 51st state, he told the room. They're very aware of our resources, of what we have, and they very much want to be able to benefit from those. Business mogul Arlene Dickinson was in the room with Trudeau as a member of his advisory council, and she says his remarks align with her own thinking.
I think my belief is very strongly, and has been, I've articulated this many times in my posts and my discussions with people, that I do believe that objective of Donald Trump is to take over our resources.
Trudeau has reportedly made similar comments privately to premiers, raising questions about how long the government has viewed this as Trump's endgame.
There could be questions to the Prime Minister and to other ministers who are involved. When did you know that this was a serious thing? Did you know he wasn't joking that first time? Like, what's really been going on behind the scenes here?
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state.
The U.S. president has been open about wanting to use economic force to annex Canada. He's threatened close ally Denmark with war if it doesn't hand over Greenland.
I don't think that sovereignty is a concept that troubles Donald Trump a whole lot. He thinks this is an artificially drawn border. And so I think just this kind of blows the doors off of everything and really kind of opens up like really strange conversations about how we will protect our sovereignty.
Canada made a show of activity at the border, trying to prove it's serious about drugs and migrants to address Trump's stated concerns.
He needed to be able to say there was a threat to the United States. That comes in the form of fentanyl and border protection. And so it is a distraction. It is something that needs to be dealt with, but it's a distraction from what he really then talks about, which is access to our resources and access to having Canada be part of the United States.
Evan Dyer reporting. Toronto police say they have arrested a suspect in a murder investigation almost 3 decades old. Officers were able to match DNA evidence from the scene to the suspect. As Greg Ross explains, the victim was Donna Ogleave, a 24-year-old woman with ties to Vancouver.
It was almost 27 years ago, in what used to be a parking lot on Carlton Street, just east of Jarvis, that 24-year-old Donna Ogleave was strangled to death.
She was from British Columbia. She'd only been in Toronto about 5 weeks at the time.
The date was March 8, 1998. Police believe Ogleave was a sex worker, which is likely how she met her attacker. DNA evidence from the murder suspect was collected at the scene, but back then, investigators were not able to match it to anyone in the national database. In recent years, with the help of more advanced technology, that changed.
We were able to, in 2022, utilize investigative genetic genealogy that led us to the offender's family.
After further DNA testing, police were able to match the evidence to 50-year-old Ronald Gordon Ackerman of Gander, Newfoundland. They say back in 1998, he was living here in the GTA.
And he was living here in Scarborough, and he was working as a truck driver at the time.
Recently, Ackerman had been traveling back and forth from Gander to Alberta, where he was working in the oil fields. On Wednesday, he was on a flight back to Gander that had a layover in Toronto, where police were waiting for him.
We'd arrested him at Toronto Pearson International Airport just after midnight. He was flying in from Edmonton. We intercepted him in Toronto.
Police say that Ackerman is now facing a charge of first-degree murder. They also say that they are going to investigate what he has been doing since the murder of Ogleave.
We need to find out what he's been doing over the past 25 years and make sure that there are no other victims, whether sexually motivated or homicides, that he could be involved in.
According to police, Ogleave was the mother of a small child, and at the time of her death, she was pregnant with her second baby. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Most of us love a good bargain, but an investigation by CBC Marketplace is showing that some of those sales may not be what they seem. Here's Asha Tomlinson.
You just came out of Old Navy. Did you get some deals?
Everything was on clearance and on sale, so I hope I got a good deal.
I found a bunch of good deals, actually.
Old Navy is well known for its sales. Just walk in and you see the signs everywhere. But we want to know, are they really what they seem? Or are you being tricked into thinking these are true discounts? We tested it out, ordering 10 products from Old Navy's website, and we tracked the prices for 7 months to see just how often they're on sale. Turns out, all 10 of the items we bought were on sale more than half of the time we tracked. The most dubious deal we found was this men's t-shirt, on sale the entire 7 months we checked.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's terrible.
Like, is a deal really a deal if it's on all the time?
So it's not really a sale.
There's also this suspect sale, a lady's shirt going for $19.99 with a countdown clock. But when time's up, the price dropped even lower to $15.99.
Retailers should be fair and accurate in their representations that they make to consumers.
Justin Giovanetti is a class action lawyer based in Vancouver. He's filed a suit against Old Navy.
Old Navy represents that their products are being sold at a discount, but in reality, we allege that that actually is not a discount price, because that's the price at which these products are always or almost always sold. So consumers are thinking that they're purchasing products that have a lot more value than they actually do. Our objective is to advance consumer rights.
Giovanetti's case hasn't been proven in court, and his class action still needs to be certified. As for Old Navy, we shared our findings with its parent company, Gap Inc. The response? No comment. Asha Tomlinson, CBC News, Toronto.
February is Black History Month, and this year we're bringing what we call Moments That Matter. We're now joined by Emily Hughes. She's the daughter of Judy Singh, a Black South Asian musician from Edmonton, popular in the 1950s through the 70s, and who landed in BC a bit later in life. Emily, we appreciate you joining us. First of all, we understand your mother had a bit of a pivotal moment, and CBC may have played a part in that.
Absolutely. So I think she was only about 19 years old, and she was singing exceptionally well. And she was asked to go and join the house band at CBC Winnipeg, actually, where they were shooting a great black and white music variety show. And my father, the now late guitarist Lynn Rowe, was in the house band, and that's actually where they met. So I would say that was a definite pivotal moment for her.
Oh my goodness. And yeah. Why does that moment feel so pivotal to you among the moments in her life, do you think?
Well, on a number of levels, it would have been life-changing. I mean, they fell in love and had me a few years later. But musically speaking, they were really compatible. I mean, he was playing at what many consider a genius level at that time, you know, in his early 20s, 22, 23. He's actually in our Canadian Music Hall of Fame as well, which is interesting to note. And she was amazingly mature vocally for her age, always in tune. And they just really connected, you know, musically and inspired each other. And I think it was, you know, it helped her artistry blossom, that whole experience.
You are a filmmaker, and you've spent years thinking about your parents, documenting their lives, in fact. What are some of the takeaways from that journey?
Oh, it's so much I've learned. It was such a privilege. I produced 2 docs profiling my late father. And I mean, I was able to hear from guitar players from every genre, rock players, jazz players, classical players. And I guess one of the things that still sticks in my mind to this day is how they all have a love and respect for each other. Once you get to that level of musicianship, it doesn't matter what genre, they all know of each other and love and respect each other.
Emily Hughes, we very much appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your parents' story with us. This has been lovely. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
From wildfires to inside a COVID ward to running into a U.S. president at a souvenir shop, we're going to look back at the pioneering career of CBC's Belle Puri as she jumps into retirement. Some of the stories we tell here at the CBC touch not only you, the viewer, reader, and listener, but also, very often, the reporters who tell them. Our colleague Belle Puri told a story 10 years ago that she says still resonates with her to this day. The story of a homeless man and the troubles he faced after he won a lottery prize.
Hard times of dog Steve Burritt for several years.
I got separated, I had some medical issues, you know, I got depressed.
He survives on temporary day-to-day work.
I've never been on welfare, I will not go on welfare. I want to just take care of myself.
We first met the 57-year-old last spring when he lived under a tree in a clearing on the edge of the Fraser River, in a home he built with salvaged building supplies and tarps.
There's a kitchen, the fridge is a blue thing. There's a portable toilet for emergencies only. He bought a whole gang, but no coffee.
It was private property. The owners told him to leave. He found another place to pitch his tent. In the summer, it seemed his luck had changed.
In July, I won $25,000 on the lottery.
It was an $8 Keno ticket that apparently won big. We went back to double check.
Can you run that through your machine?
Sure. He was right.
Congratulations, you've won a major prize.
Then an unfortunate twist.
I tried to cash the ticket, and Lotto BC will not cash my ticket because I do not have photo ID.
He can't get new photo identification without a birth certificate, and he can't get a new Quebec birth certificate without photo identification, leaving Burritt out in the cold, literally.
I love to be inside for Christmas. That was my plan in July when I won the money, is to be in for Christmas. And to tell you the truth, if I got my ticket cashed today, I'd give $1,000 to the gospel mission or something to help other homeless people.
After 5 months of Burritt trying to get ID, we got involved. And finally, one of our calls landed in the right office. An NDP staffer who works for Victoria MLA Carol James knew how to get a Quebec birth certificate. She's done it before for other homeless people. Just fill out the right papers.
Okay, so that's all done. That's done.
Now it's just waiting. The birth certificate should arrive in 3 weeks, and then it's back to the lottery office.
Merry Christmas.
All the best.
The windfall, Burritt says, will give him a new beginning, a real roof over his head, and the courage to reach out to his family.
That is one of thousands of stories done by this woman, the CBC's Belle Puri. Today is her last day with the CBC News. After 48 years in journalism, she's about to embark on new adventures in retirement and beyond. Thank you for being here. First of all, what goes through your mind when you see Steve Burritt's story?
That was, people keep asking me which stories stay in your mind. That one totally does. Because, when he first told us, I have this dilemma. Yeah. I'm like, no problem, we'll fix it. But you heard 5 months of bureaucracy and catch-22s everywhere we turned. And I don't know what came over me, but I was like, I'm not going to be defeated by the system. And he got his birth certificate and he got his ID, and then we went to BC Lotto and collected his $25,000 check. In the time that we had been doing all those stories, he attracted attention, and a construction company offered him a job, so he was working, and that day he was going to get his check, and then he was going out to sign a lease on a apartment rental. It was a wonderful story. Wonderful.
Life-changing.
Life-changing. And I think about him often and hope that everything is still good.
From that to presidents, you've been lucky to be in the right place at the right time with a certain commander-in-chief. I'm told this was a gift shop. What happened?
Yes, well, it was during the Boris Yeltsin, Bill Clinton summit. It was down at the Canada Place on a weekend. And one of our former colleagues, camera operator, we were down there. Everything was over, and we thought we were heading back to our truck. But we ended up through the parking lot, and there was a gift shop down there, and Alan and I both just kind of look up, and I'm like, oh, so it's Bill Clinton. He's shopping, he's picking up trinkets on his way home. Yeah. And the time was so different then. Like today, it would have been an incident. But no one said anything to us, and we just kind of stood back and let him shop. And the security people didn't say anything, and he kind of waved and said hi, and then he went away, and then the shop owner told us what he bought and how much he spent.
Hopefully there was quality trinkets.
Yes.
From something slightly lighter, in the depths of the pandemic, you did a series of stories from Royal Columbian Hospital with patients in critical care, intubated, their families, and how difficult that was on them, and the healthcare workers trying to keep them alive. Why was it important to be in there for you?
Oh, I think people totally needed to understand that these numbers were not just numbers, they were people. And there's another example of how much work we put into before we actually get to a story. It was weeks, months of working with Fraser Health, trying to convince them that it was a good idea that I go in there and with a camera colleague. And then this family came forward. The dad, 44 years old, was totally fine, got sick, and then it was COVID, and then he had to move from one hospital to RCH and ICU, and they shared their story with us. And then the sad part is a couple months later, he passed away. But it was, look, this is for real. And that story was about people, the patients. And then we went back and we talked to the nurses and doctors who we had talked to in the first story to see how they were doing. And that was an entirely different story about the impact on them and their lives and their personal lives at home.
Such a broad sweep of such a different and difficult time. A colleague of ours said today, we are here because of you, in that you paved the way for many South Asian journalists to thrive in this industry. What does that mean to you?
I was speechless when I heard that. It wasn't intentional. I mean, when I was hired, at that point, they were just trying to get more women into newsrooms. And I'm sure that's all was on anyone's mind, was get a female into the newsroom. The rest of it was just happened and was really a wonderful thing. And now I see across the board how our communities are reflected. And if I had a hand in that, that's great.
48 years in journalism, Belle Puri. Thank you for being a mentor, a friend, the service, and a great deal of fun. We love you.
Thank you, my friend.
That wasn't emotional at all. Darius Madavi saying goodbye to Belle Puri. What a pioneer. Awesome.
Yeah, there's a big send-off here in the newsroom.
No kidding. She has earned everything. We do love her. Are we going to love the weather this weekend?
Some people will. Some people love all the weather. It's going to be cold. We've got this Arctic ridge still in place sitting over BC, but we may see a few flurries sneak in underneath, especially for the south coast, breaking into the southern interior at times. But that Arctic ridge is really sticking around for a while. Temperatures may start to come up in the middle of next week. If we take a look at our precipitation across BC, you'll notice pretty much just what I said. We're seeing a couple flurries breaking in a few places, but for the most part, that ridge is keeping us dry and for the most part, sunny. I would say that some cloud will come in and out, especially here in Vancouver and across parts of the island. We may see some cloud moving in at times tomorrow and Sunday, but for the most part, we're looking at lots of sunshine right through the weekend. I will say that it is looking more likely we could have a bit more cloud than previously expected on Sunday, but still should be lots of sunshine. In terms of those highs over the next couple days, remember to subtract a few degrees for the wind chill if you're just going out. But overall, temperatures staying fairly consistent. They do come up a bit tomorrow and then fall once again in many places as we get into early next week, especially those lows. And actually, I've made a new board here because we're looking at wind chill lows specifically. I do think this model is underselling it a bit for places like Vancouver and on parts of the island. I would say it's going to feel quite a bit cooler than what it's saying here. But for the interior, it does do a good job of painting the picture. I'd say that for places like Vancouver, in terms of those lows, probably subtract a few more degrees, maybe another 5 degrees or so in terms of, especially in the mornings when you're first waking up, if you're up early, could feel quite a bit colder than what this model is showing. But yeah, just be aware of that. But other than that, very cold temperatures. We're talking frostbite in minutes temperatures up in the north, and in the southern interior, quite a lot colder than normal as well. If we take a look at our sunshine across the province, lots of that still over the next couple days. But again, the slight chance of some flurries breaking in some places, in the south especially. I'd say that in the Peace, also a chance of flurries, a higher chance of flurries than in the south. But we should see pretty much nothing on Sunday. Lots of sunshine coming on Sunday. Here is our 5-day forecast for Vancouver. And once again, watch out for that wind chill tomorrow morning, feeling probably close to negative double digits. Some flurries in the morning, then clearing up in the afternoon. This should have some sunshine in there as well. And then some sunny skies and cold nights as we get into early next week, Dan.
Okay. It's Friday, so that means... Fun Fact Friday. What do you have to share?
All right, today we are talking about animals that feign death, which sounds a little bit morbid, but these are all animals that are doing it to avoid a predator because they get startled or that sort of thing. And I think the most famous example of this is the opossum, often just called opossum, but the technical name has an O in front here in North America. It's an opossum. This is it feigning death. And when we say faking death, that implies that it sort of has it's choosing to do it. But in reality, opossums undergo what's called thanatosis, which is really more of an involuntary comatose state. They get so scared that basically they are forced into this. They aren't choosing to do it. So it's not so much faking death as it is literally being frozen with fear. With that being said, there are some animals that do actually fake their death. This is not one of them. This is a fainting goat. These are a specific breed of goat from Tennessee. You can see them fainting here. When they get startled or afraid, they will just fall right over. They're not hurt by any means. It's just basically when you tense your muscles, when you get startled and you tense your muscles involuntarily, they're basically doing that, but they don't have the ability to untense their muscles. It takes them a few minutes to do it. So they just sort of fall over. This is an animal that actually does fake its death. This is a hog-nosed snake. They are very adorable. Actually, take a look at this video. They, especially when they're babies, will just sort of writhe around upside down. They will also just, if you try and flip them back over onto their front, they will just flip themselves back. You can see that here. Well, there you go. They stick out their little tongues. All of these animals do, both the snakes and the opossums do sometimes poop on themselves, so that is less fun. Last one I don't have a photo of, but a killdeer. Take a look at this one. This is not faking death, this is faking an injury. You can see it's pretending to have a broken wing. Usually if a predator approaches the nest, it'll flap its wing and pretend it's injured to try and draw that predator away from the nest and just keep hopping away, and then they'll just get up and hop away like nothing's normal. That bird was not injured by any means. A few minutes later in that video, it just hops up and just hops away and is very happy.
No temper tantrums. We understand. Very fun. Thanks.
Thank you.
A push for more accessibility. Kwantland Polytechnic University unveils a new device you will want to learn about. Yes, about. Stick around.
Kwantlen Polytechnic University's Surrey campus is unveiling a device it hopes will make a mark when it comes to accessibility, especially for people who are visually impaired.
As Liam Britton shows us, it's a printer that can allow anyone to make documents in Braille.
Between reports, assignments, notes, study guides, and cheat sheets, university students do their fair share of printing. At Kwantlen Polytechnic in Surrey, when it comes to accessibility, this printer is truly making its mark.
Technically, it's a Braille embosser. It's a piece of technology that can print in Braille.
Kelsey Chaban is the Indigenous and EDIA liaison librarian at KPU. She says this device breaks down barriers for people who use Braille.
To print out shopping lists or assignments or, personal documents. So this is just kind of one way that we're trying to bring equity to our printing services at the library.
A Braille embosser is a lot like your typical printer at home or the office. It receives text from a computer and then translates the letters into Braille. These devices press into the page, forming tactile characters people who are visually impaired can read. KPU's printer arrived just this week, and there's excitement about the possibilities.
So we have been working closely kind of on a trial basis with an instructor, and she's been printing out PowerPoint notes so her Braille using students can follow along in class. And we've been told that it has made a big difference.
Chaban and the university say these devices are not common. One big reason? The price. While you can pick up a run-of-the-mill printer for under $100, Braille embossers can cost thousands. KPU charges 25 cents a page to use theirs, and Chaban says non-students are welcome to use it as well.
I don't believe that this has been available in this way in Western Canada before.
Chaban hopes for Braille users that this embosser spells out a difference in their lives. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
It sounds like a dot matrix printer, but way better, thankfully.
And
That's right.
I know what that is. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.